Now that the account section is completed, we can move on in listing our offers. We will list our created offers and our received offers. In order to communicate with our API and make authenticated requests, we need to add the native auth token to the authorization header of every request made from our dashboard. In order to do that, we can use Axios and set up the Axios interceptors. Let's start by installing our dependencies. We will use Axios. We will also use Axios hooks. And further, we will use Formic for building forms, and Yup for form validation. Let's create our Setup Interceptors helper. First, we will create a helpers folder. Then, we will create a new file named Setup Interceptors. We will define our function. This method will receive an auth token, which will be our native auth token. And we will use the default Axios instance to set up the interceptors. So, for every request, we will add the authorization header with the bearer auth token. Of course, we need to return the config. Now that we have our setup interceptors function, we need to create a hook, which we will use in our navbar layout component. We will create the hooks folder, in which we will create a new file named useSetupInterceptors. And we will create our hook. We will retrieve our token login, which is basically our native auth token. Which we get from the useGetLoginInfo hook from SDK dApp. Let's import that. The native auth token is under the token login, so we'll extract that. And we will set a flag when the interceptors are applied. We will set this flag to true. By default, the interceptors are not applied. So for that, in order to apply the interceptors, we will create a use effect. Which will check if we have a native auth token. So if we don't, we will early return. And if we do, we can call our setup interceptors function with the token. We have made a little mistake here, so there will be the native auth token, which is a string. And we will set our setup interceptors applied flag to true, because we have set the interceptors. And this use effect will listen for the native auth token. And the hook will return the interceptor applied flag. And that concludes our use setup interceptors hook. And this hook we will use in our navbar layout. And of course, we will need to use the hook that we have just created, so we will get the flag, the interceptor applied flag from our hook. And as long as this flag is false, we can display some loading animation. Great. As you can see, if we start our app, nothing really changes. And we have our loader. Of course, we need to display the loader if the interceptors were not applied. Quick loader, and then we have the dashboard. And maybe let's check our requests. And as we can see, we have our native auth token added to our authorization header.